Let's get started with today's webinar. I wanted to take this opportunity to welcome and thank you for joining us for our Grid Markets Pharma webinars featuring powerful molecular simulations and screens tools. Today's webinar, Scientific Visualization, is the first of our two-part scientific visualization series. Over the next hour, we're going to explore how visual effects artist Kate Xagoraris transforms Mo simulations data into stunning visuals, animations, and scientific models for greater communication impact. In today's presentation, we will learn how to create cinematic quality visuals from Mo simulations using the powerful and gold standard of 3D animation software, Houdini. Specifically, this webinar will cover an introduction to Houdini, an overview of how to export Mo data into Houdini, and a description of how to measure and model proteins with Houdini. My name is Wendy Neiman, and I'll be your moderator for our time together today. We'll start out with a couple of brief presentations from Mark Ross with Grid Markets and Ben Hill with Oracle, and then we'll hear from our featured presenter. Mark will discuss Grid Markets' molecular simulations and screening service, and Ben will cover the highly secure Oracle Cloud, which powers the Grid Markets service. Then we will hear from our guest speaker, Kate Xagoraris, VFX artist at MPC Film. We'll wrap up with a Q&A session at the end, so please be sure to drop those questions in the Zoom Q&A tab located at the bottom right of your screen. Now, without further delay, I'm pleased to introduce our first presenter, Mark Ross. Mark is based in San Francisco and is co-founder of Grid Markets. Grid Markets offers a secure molecular simulation and screening service, which Mark will describe in more detail. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. I'm going to give you a quick overview of Grid Markets and the service that we provide. As Wendy indicated, you can use Grid Markets to securely run molecular simulations and screens at scale. The solutions that we support are Mo, Amber, Gromax, NAMD, Quantum Bio, and Surflex. The advantages of the platform include the ability to accelerate your drug discovery process. And how do we do that? We give you the ability to select between one and hundreds of concurrently running machines, and machines that are very powerful, up to 96 threads per machine. Also, you can leverage our unlimited Mo tokens if you're a Mo user, and Amber licenses without impacting your local license count. So we use our own licenses and tokens, not yours. And you can run simulations in parallel, as many as you want. So this helps to eliminate local machine lockup. Also, the other advantage of our service is it allows you to shed fixed costs. You don't have to make investments in machines. There's not expensive infrastructure and so on, and you only pay for the machine seconds that you consume. The pricing is all inclusive, so the price is by the machine hour, and there are no fixed or upfront fees. And importantly, the other advantage of the Grid Markets platform is that it allows you to focus on innovation, not on infrastructure administration. The setup is super easy. It takes less than 5 minutes with 3 easy steps. I'll show you what those are in a moment. No special skills are required, no training, and you can submit from your simulation software, meaning you don't have to learn anything new. If you can use the software you're already familiar with, that is. So let's see how it works, how the setup works. Again, it's 3 steps. So the first step is to go to our website, which is pharmagridmarkets.com at the top there, and you create your account. After you create your account, you download a tool called Envoy, which I'll explain what that does in a moment, and you install that. And you're done with the setup after you've installed Envoy. And now you're ready to submit. So literally, as I said, a couple minutes to get to this point. Now that you're set up, from within, this example is showing Mo. So this is a dialog box that appears within Mo when you're ready to submit a Mo submission. And you fill out this dialog box with some basic things like your project name, your submission name, and so on. And then, as I mentioned, you pick the number of machines that you want to choose for this submission. In the red box there is a slider, and you decide how many machines you want to use for this particular submission. And after that, you hit submit, and that's it. Easy peasy. When you do that, Envoy will then send your submission to one of two secure clouds, either the Oracle Cloud or the Amazon Cloud. And we're going to hear again from Ben today about the security of the Oracle Cloud. So the Grid Markets platform will route your submission automatically for you. You don't have to worry about the cloud connection. We take care of all that for you. After that happens, we allocate the licenses. In this case, again, the example is Mo. So we're allocating, excuse me, the Mo tokens that you need to run at scale. These tokens are not, these are our tokens, not your tokens. So your local tokens remain available for you to use. And you can scale up to as many tokens as you need at that moment. Then, as your job is running, real-time updates come down to Envoy, and they're displayed for you to keep track of your job. And here's what that looks like. This is a screenshot of that. So this is an Envoy screenshot, and it's showing in this case that you have two jobs running at the bottom there. One is running and the other is waiting. You can click on those jobs and find out the details of those jobs. So if you want to find out what the status of the running job is, you click on the running icon there and you see the logs, in this case for Mo, that's running at the time. So you can go all the way down to those logs if you want. When your job is finished, the results will be passed back to Envoy and installed or deposited rather on the whatever local storage area you have designated. And that's it. That's the end of it. So let's talk about what are some of the differences between this approach and the more traditional approaches of building a cluster or building something on top of an IaaS, an infrastructure as a service solution, versus the Grid Markets option. So firstly, the setup, as I mentioned, the setup is, in the Grid Markets case, is super easy. It takes 3 steps, whereas the other 2 options are much more complicated to set up. Also, the ability to scale your tokens or your licenses is very limited in the case of the local cluster or the IaaS option. It's limited by how many tokens or clusters you have. In our case, we have access to unlimited numbers of tokens and licenses, so there's no limit there. You can scale machines very easily with us. You scale as needed. In the local cluster, obviously, is limited to by how many machines you have locally and what your quota is in the case of an IaaS solution. The setup cost, in the case of Grid Markets, there is no setup cost. It's free to get started. Your account, to set up your account is free. Those steps that I mentioned to you in Envoy, those are all things that you can do with no financial risk. We also give you, I didn't mention, a free trial as well, so you can try it for free and see how it goes. So no financial commitment at all to get started, whereas it's a pretty significant financial commitment for the local cluster, and some financial commitment for the IaaS option. Same for maintenance. The Grid Markets option, there's nothing to maintain, and therefore there's no cost to maintain it. There's no people required or special skills to maintain it. It's very easy. And the usage cost, as I mentioned, it's all inclusive. It's on a per machine hour basis, whereas in the case of the local cluster, it's predictable. You have control over that, but it's high. And in the case of the infrastructure as a service solution, typically they are unpredictable. You get charges at the end of the month for data egress and data storage and so on, which you can't predict in advance, or at least are hard to predict in advance. So the Grid Markets cost, you can actually predict it upfront. You know exactly what it's going to be, whereas the others are much more difficult to predict. And lastly, in the case of the return on investment, so in the Grid Markets case, you only pay for it as you use it, therefore it has a very high ROI, whereas in the other cases, not so much so. So if you're interested in more details, this is our website, pharma.gridmarkets.com. If you want to send us, drop us a line for questions, you can email us at pharma@gridmarkets.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. Our next presenter is Ben Hill. Ben is based in Seattle and is the Global Director for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure at Oracle. With more than 15 years cloud architecture and product management experience, Ben manages a global team of cloud architects responsible for supporting clients with all things cloud related. Ben is going to briefly share with us the security Oracle brings to the table. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Wendy. So again, my name is Ben Hill, and I'm based in Seattle. So I'll run through this really quickly and talk to you guys about how we approach security as it relates to our cloud infrastructure services. So when Oracle went about launching our Generation 2 cloud offering, our approach to security was deliberate and direct. We wanted to ensure that it was always on, automated, architected in, and best of all, free. So let's go through some of the high points on how we went about doing this. First of all, more security by default. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, we designed for isolation, which means we've taken the hypervisor and put it on the network layer. This approach separates customer traffic, which provides better security and performance. And as an added bonus, it reduces the risk of hypervisor-based attacks. Also, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI, has what's called separation of duties, which means Oracle admins have no access to a customer's memory space. And as it relates to your data and associated storage services, we have full encryption at rest and in motion, as well as integrated backups for business continuity and disaster recovery best practices. Now let's chat a little bit about our auto detection and remediation capabilities, specifically Oracle Cloud Guard and OCI security zones. Oracle Cloud Guard provides comprehensive end-to-end monitoring for your cloud environments by continuously collecting and analyzing service configurations, audit logs, and other information, and reporting its findings as problems based on either out-of-the-box security recipes or custom security recipes created by your admin. And to complement Oracle Cloud Guard, Oracle has OCI security zones, which provides a secure enclave with customer tenancies for the most sensitive workloads where security is mandatory and always on. This helps ensure compute, networking, storage, and database resources comply with security principles such as always-on encryption, no public access, and automated backups. And as I said before, most security services are free, like multi-factor authentication for user access, OCI Vault, which can be used to store passwords, SSH keys, and certificate. And unlike our competitors, OCI welcomes third-party tools you can use to federate your identity and access management policies with your organization's centralized identity providers, as well as SIM systems like Splunk and LogRhythm. All right, that's all I have, Wendy. I will send it back over to you, quick and fast.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. Next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Kate Xagoraris, VFX artist at MPC Film in Toronto, Canada. Kate is an internationally renowned visual effects artist, writer, professor, and industry mentor. Drawing on her strong VFX background, Kate helps researchers and scientists translate their innovative discoveries into stunning visuals to effectively increase the communication impact of their work across a broad range of media. She hosts Scientific Design in Houdini, a Houdini user group for VFX artists that encourages outside-the-box thinking with scientific data and focuses on the beneficial role of visual effects in the scientific visualization and technology worlds. In addition, Kate runs a VFX site for artists to help them better understand Houdini's scientific visualization value across many research fields, including biology, quantum materials, marine studies, and astrophysics. Welcome, Kate, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that. So today, we're going to be covering how you can visualize protein structures in Houdini. And we'll be specifically kind of focusing on how you can visualize proteins associated with diabetic functions in the human body. This topic is pretty close to home for me because I have a few researchers in my family who specialize in dietary needs associated with diabetes and pregnancy. So they were like the first go-to people I went to when we were setting up this presentation, as they had all these scientific resources for me to check out. So today, before we go into all the structures we'll be showcasing, just a little rundown on on how diabetes kind of controls your body and what it is. So there's two different types of diabetes, but firstly, it's a condition where your body fails to produce insulin, or your body can't properly use the insulin it creates. So insulin controls the amount of sugar in your body. So too much or too less sugar can cause deadly side effects. So swelling feet, loss of limbs, heart failure, etc. Your body uses sugar for energy. However, too much sugar can cause damage to organs, as we just talked about. Insulin is produced in the pancreas, and people who have damage to their pancreas, regardless of their weight, can also develop diabetes. So the two different types of diabetes are type 1, which is classified as an autoimmune disease, and people with type 1 are not able to produce their own insulin, and they are completely dependent on insulin injections. They can also produce glucose, however, their cells cannot absorb glucose as they are extremely high risk of high blood sugars. Type 2 diabetes is also caused by many different things. In this case, the body can still produce insulin, however, the cells cannot absorb it. And people who develop type 2 usually have a family member with diabetes, or they are overweight, or they are over the age of 10. So there's two main different types, and diabetes is such a global issue, and so many people have it nowadays. I thought it would be worth to cover what it kind of looks like at a molecular level. So one of little protein I kind of wanted to highlight about diabetes is albumin, which is a very key protein in the structure when you study diabetes. It's a protein made by your liver. It helps you keep fluid and other elements in your bloodstream so they don't leak into your surrounding tissues. Doctors usually measure the amount of this protein in your blood to detect problems with your liver and kidneys. The protein we'll be breaking down today is associated with kidney function, but more on that later. In high-risk diabetic patients, liver and kidney problems are very commonplace because often diabetic patients are peeing out blood sugar or sugar through the urine if they have too much sugar in their body, or kidneys are a really good sign to say, okay, is your diabetes under control or is it not? So albumin also carries hormones, enzymes, and medicine throughout your bloodstream. So if you have a low albumin level, this can result in a lack of nutrients entering your body and your overall body mechanics shutting down. There are different types of albumin in your blood, and this includes ovalbumin, human serum albumin, or HSA, bovine serum albumin, BSA, which of the last, of course, is seen in bovines and extracted from cows. This protein is also considered a globular protein and is water soluble, and it has several helices that make it very rigid. So we are going to be talking about PBD a lot today. So the PBD is the protein data bank, and it contains a lot of open source mold data. So we're going to be talking about that. Each protein structure that's stored in this database has a unique ID number, and this helps track it. Each protein in PBD also has a 3D representation and lists their other molecules that are contained within the structure. It does more than that. There's also very helpful visuals on this site. So I know if there's any scientists in this call, they're probably very familiar with this site, but just for the viewers who have never seen it before, it's probably one of the best open source data banks on the planet. So today, we are using a software called Houdini to showcase these proteins. Houdini is a 3D graphics package that was originally developed and designed for visual effects and animation in the film industry. It was first designed to be as procedural as possible, and that sits at Houdini's core. Currently, it's now used in VFX, motion graphics, virtual reality, film, and TV. On top of that, it's also used by corporations such as NASA for astrophysical visualization, medical rendering, and much more. There are many perks to the software, which is why it's so flexible and so enjoyable. It processes a lot of data faster than other 3D graphics packages, such as Maya. So it's really a go-to place for entering accurate data in right now. Houdini is extremely durable and a durable software. It has fast and easy replication of objects, fast simulation time, Python inputs, and its own internal coding language, to name a few. It has won numerous Academy Awards for its development in visualization technology and also has a founding background in science. One of the first founders of Houdini and creators of Houdini, he originally helped design simulations for the Canadarm, which still is used on the ISS for this day, very day. So it has such a background in science from its own creators and what they were developing in the 80s before they even created Houdini, or Prisms as it used to be called. So there's a lot of thought that's gone into the software to make it what it is today. One of the best parts of Houdini is its ability to combine modeling, effects, lighting, and rendering workflows together. So if you build something in the software, you already have a built-in pipeline to output everything you've created. While creating and saving your effects, you can also be working on light rigs, correcting mistakes, and previewing renders all at the same time. One of the best ways of Houdini that we're going to kind of showcase today is that while something is thinking in the background, you can also be doing a bazillion other things. So you also have real-time feedback of what's happening in your viewport. There's so many different functionalities of the software. It's kind of hard to explain all in one lecture, but we're going to try. Houdini also has an awesome Python interface that you can import your own APIs and other tool sets with ease. So if you're a very Python-oriented person, this is also a software for you, because there's Python shells, there's Python wrangles, there's Python nodes, there's tons of different ways to make sure your code gets implemented successfully. When it comes to visualizing scientific data, Houdini is great for importing point cloud information and processing attributes. It works with a range of volumes and VBD formats, and it has several different nodes that can help you isolate values, attributes, and groups. These processes are fantastic for keeping your scene clear of information that is cluttering. One of my favorite parts of Houdini is its ability to input waves, animation, and point information, and velocity fields, which you could say is a lot of different elements. But let's kind of start with waves and animations first. One of the internal functions of Houdini is a system called chops. Chops is a channel called channel operators, and these allow you to add wave functions into your animations for faster and easy procedural movements. They also allow you to build and input wave systems from musical instruments, sounds, and wave patterns with smaller objects such as atoms. There's a few examples of the Houdini community creating tool sets and accurate examples using chops, such as quantum material electron waves within the software. So chops is really useful because not only can you import wave functions into the software, and allows for that ability, but you can also kind of animate something in the software and export it as a wave function through chops. So there's other tool sets, particularly the Houdini musical tool set, that allows you to actually animate, let's say, a bouncing ball in the software, and then output that as a musical sound through Houdini, which is mind-blowing. The interface applications of Houdini also allow for quick and easy changes in case you need to add your own attributes, sliders, drop-down menus, and toggles. Combining this with its animation editor, it also allows you to promote different levels of parameters and view animations at the same time. Bringing in point information into Houdini is incredibly simple. Houdini accepts a different range of formats, as we've talked about, and its geometry spreadsheet allows for a quick and easy solution for viewing strings, primitives, and point and additional attributes. So one cool thing about Houdini is that when you view any attributes on any object, it separates them all based on the information it's associated with, which we'll kind of get into today. When you play back the timeline in Houdini, you can also watch how the attributes on every single vertex, point, and primitive and polygon change over time in real time as well. So let's say if you need to work on velocities or pretty much anything that involves motion, Houdini allows for quick and easy setups of velocity fields and internal volumes in its internal volume system. And it also allows you to affect points of these fields or even fluids. Houdini is not only allows you to create physical accurate simulations, but it also allows you to quickly replicate anything you create as well. So one downside to using PVD data or mold data in Houdini once you enter it is that you won't be able to measure distances and bond angles unless you create a custom-made system, which we're going to try and showcase today, but you can use SOPs and VEX nodes to achieve this. Most scientific visualization packages have specific tools for this, but Houdini is special where it just allows you to customize and create your own tools based on what you are trying to achieve. So you can also use Houdini to create custom renders and cinematics, which is very easy to do. Houdini also allows for you to simulate structures as well, but once again, you have to make custom-made systems to allow for accurate atomic movements. And again, you can do this through VEX or VOS. So today we'll be covering the VOS method. Houdini is great at displaying wireframe and space-filling diagrams of structures as well. A great resource to kind of work in tandem with PPD and Houdini is Proteipedia. They give detailed breakdowns of human protein structures and 3D examples of them as well. But before we kind of demonstrate how to use this database and also all the data inside of Houdini, I also want to give out some shout outs to the Houdini community of people who already headed down this road of visualizing protein information inside the software. The first shout out kind of goes to the wonderful team at Intagma. Intagma is run by two wonderful artists named Manuel and Mortz, and their site is probably one of the best Houdini run sites in the world, and it's great. It's a great starting place if you've never worked with the software before. And they also have wonderful segments for visualizing the coronavirus spike protein with Dr. Jérôme Claude. And they also have a great podcast on how to translate scientific documents into 3D space. So I highly recommend stopping by them if you're new to Houdini and you want to achieve what we're going to try and do today inside of the software. The next shout out kind of goes to another artist named Stuart Jansen. He runs a channel called Making Biocinematics. He has a great YouTube channel where he walks you through creating actin filaments in Houdini as well as other nanostructures. Both of these places are great. Stuart also has a website which you can also check out, which is linked to his YouTube channel. Now, let's kind of jump into the Houdini visualization breakdown. So before we jump into the software, we should cover the basics of the attributes and groups you're going to see while we begin this demonstration. When you import your data into Houdini and jump into the Houdini spreadsheet, you'll notice that there are tons of attributes that come in with the point cloud. The first you might notice is the chain ID, element name, res name, and res sequence and serial number. The chain ID will show you the main chains of the structure. This can be A, B, or C, or even D, depending on the structure. When visualized, these protein chains will make up the majority of the system as like long, winding lines. The element attribute will also show up with different letters underneath it. These letters represent the different elements inside the system. So depending on the structure, you might see the letters C, O, and N, or more. C stands for carbon, O for oxygen, N for nitrogen. Next up is the name attributes. Name corresponds with the element attributes, so depending on the structure, you might see letters such as N, O, C, A, and C, or more underneath it. Sorry. Or even more complicated letters such as CG2 and CG1. Usually N, C, and O will correspond with the element name, but the others will give you more individual information on the carbon variants. CG1, for example, is a carbon element, but that's also containing its position information. So after that is res name. Underneath this attribute, we'll find a list of hyphenated letters, for example, GYL or GULU or even HOH or more. These represent the chemical compounds of the molecule and also the amino acids. Some of these represent sugar or glucose or other components. So please refer to PDB or your other periodic table of elements when you are at this stage of visualizing your structure. Please selectively delete these chemicals if you want to still isolate different areas of the structure, which we'll also cover today. Ressex sequence also corresponds with the res name. However, it displays the sequence number corresponding with each chemical compound. This shows where it is in the structure. Serial also shows the total count of all points within the structure, and depending on how you would like to animate your structure, you can also take a look at the temperature factor attribute. This will show you how solid each element is and how it behaves under certain conditions or values. Isolating data in Houdini is fairly simple. It only requires you to create 2 lines of X to isolate any attribute or groups within the structure. And in the demo today, I'll be going over today, we'll be talking about the HDAs we've developed and the code inside of them. So we're going to be cracking them open as well as showing their top level structure. These HDAs are exportable, and we'll kind of talk about where you can find them after the presentation. So in this demonstration, we'll also be covering how you can create a custom measurement tool within the software to measure the distance between each molecule, as well as kind of give them a number so you can count how many amino acids are in a particular chain. Measuring where these molecules are is important, as it's easier to understand how they interact with certain parts of the structure. And this tool will also showcase how easy it is to isolate areas of the protein with little to no coding. We'll also kind of cover how different parts of the structure and groups and attributes are carried on the point clouds and where you can find them and how they kind of relate to PBD. You can also group atoms by chains they are associated with within the protein, and we'll be covering these more when we create space-filling diagrams and ribbon diagrams within the software. One really cool thing about Houdini is that it has these open source tools that come with it called Side Effects Labs. Side Effects Labs contains some of the most advanced modeling tools currently with the software to make your workflows faster, as well as containing tools that can bring information from other software and for texturing and effects purposes. These tools are great for diagnosing bad mesh interactions or intersecting geometry, as well as measuring the distances between points in 3D space. Currently, a lot of the labs tools work with mocap information and open source world building sites like OpenStreetMap. However, I also find these tools are also pretty great with pretty much any modeling or animation you might need to do in the software, even if they don't relate to open source maps or even mocap. So just a little refresher before we actually show our final file, for the people who are kind of new to protein visualization, there's 3 different ways you can visualize a protein. These are space-filling diagrams, backbone or ribbon diagrams, or wireframe. Wireframe, these diagrams showcase each covalent bond between atoms. Space-filling diagrams, these are diagrams that showcase each atom as a sphere. And backbone or ribbon diagrams, these are diagrams that show protein chain folds. So backbone diagrams just show a tube connecting to each chain. With ribbons, the chains are showcased as helices. These different diagrams are also used for different things. So wireframe is great if you'd like to look at the small details of a protein structure. Space filling is great for seeing how proteins interact with each other, as well as viewing the overall shape and structure of the protein. Scientists often like to use these diagrams because they are the most useful for showing how much space is in between atoms, as well as parts that might connect with other proteins. So backbone and ribbon are also great for visualizing protein folding. Protein folding is a process that makes the protein active in its current environment. So coloring your structure is also very important. You want people to understand and distinguish each individual structure differently. So you don't want a black and white photograph like this. Usually structures are colored from blue to red to show the beginning and ends of the change. And it is also advised that color every different protein differently to reduce confusion between atoms. And it's also a great way it's also the best way to showcase the bonds between atoms. And you can color different atoms differently based on their elemental composition. So in today's presentation, we will also kind of go over the simple color techniques you can use in Houdini and how to create your own custom colors for every individual structure of the scene. Houdini is very flexible. It allows to blend color attributes of different groups or attributes. So if you wanted to build a shape-filling diagram of a protein and highlight the hydrogen atoms, for example, you could absolutely do so. So let's kind of dive into Houdini. Now it's time for the actual kind of demonstration of the protein we are covering today. So we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's first look at PBD. So this is the structure we're kind of looking at today. Its code under PBD is for NEF, and is next-ray structure of human aquaform. It's considered a membrane protein, and you can see like the 4 individual chains in this photograph here. PBD is great because you can also get additional data for the atomic count of the structure as well. One of the things I'm going to continue to develop with this tool set is that as soon as you bring in this information into Houdini, you can also achieve an accurate atomical count as soon as the structure is inside of it, as well as other residue counts and things like that, or any additional information you might need to visualize the structure based on the other things we are going to cover today. If you would like to download your individual mold data from Houdini, from PBD and bring it into Houdini, you can go to download files and click on the PBD format. That is probably the best format to use when you're bringing in information into Houdini because it has all the information that you will need. So let's dive into our file. So we kind of have a lot going on here. We have some space filling diagrams that are on. We have some ribbon diagrams, and we also have some interesting little atomical things going on over here. So as you can see, I've kind of separated everything individually, and I can turn off different elements of the structure based on certain nodes. So that's something that's really great about Houdini is that you can promote different aspects, whatever structure you model to the surface. So each individual one can have its own individual node, and you can just break it down like that. So let's start with space filling diagrams and our space filling diagram HDA that we've kind of developed for the software. So I'm going to be taking a look at our space filling D section of the structure on this side. But let's jump up to the surface here where we've kind of brought in our information. So after downloading your file from PBD or bringing in your mold data, it's going to appear as a point cloud in the software. And the point cloud here, it looks very boring, but there's a lot going on. If we go over to our geometry spreadsheet, which you can usually find at the upper kind of center area of your screen, if we click on that, we can kind of see everything we just talked about, where we've got our chain ID, our element, our name, our occupancy, our res name, and our res sequence, as well as our serial numbers and our temperature factors over here. Play in the back, nothing's happening because there's no animation on this model, but we do have all our necessary data that we need to model this. So the first thing you'll want to do when you bring in your information is kind of transform it to the center of the world. So I have it transformed it down here. So what I've done is I've taken a transform node and I've gone move centroid to origin, and that will automatically place it at the center of my world view. And then I've kind of rotated the structure in a position that I've liked. And that's what you kind of would do to get it kind of set up in the software. So over here, I have 2 different nodes that are going on, and the first one is called remove sugars. So I don't really need any sugars today in the structure. So anything that has that's under res name in our geometry spreadsheet, if it contains this name or this string, will be removed from the structure. And then for my next kind of node this is where it gets kind of fun, where I've started to isolate the different chain IDs. So every single chain, if we go over to our geometry spreadsheet, we can probably find it here. You'll see A's, B's, and if you scroll down, we got C, and we also have D. So we are just telling Houdini, hey, based on these strings, so on the chain ID, call this BAD, like that. Then I've kind of added a little null, and nulls are really useful in Houdini. They literally stand for nothing, and they allow you just to put them down as placeholders, or even if you wanted to store values inside of them, you can absolutely do so like that. So if you wanted to use them as controllers for HDAs, you can also turn them into those. So down here, we have a few things going on. We have these blast nodes for about every single node that is being exported down below. And what these blast nodes are doing is basically we're telling it, hey, find chain D and then delete it from the structure and isolate it for us. So only chain D will be fed in these 2 HDAs. And over here, we only chain C will, A, and B. So all of them are being broken off and separated individually for our space filling diagram. Down here, we have our space filling HDA. So what the space filling HDA is designed to do is give you maximum flexibility when you are modeling these structures. It also allows you for different animation actions and also visualizing different elements on the structure. So let's cover the modeling tab first. The modeling tab works with something called voxels. So basically, if we were to dive inside here, we kind of notice straight away that we have something called VBD from particles, which basically what this node does, it takes down any points that are coming in and converts them to a VDB or a volume based on what you'd like. And then we've kind of converted them back to polygons. So what this voxel size does is basically controls the resolution. So the higher the resolution, the less detail, the lower the resolution, the more detail. And that's really up to your own personal preference. The point radius scale really comes down to basically controlling the shape of your space filling diagram. So if you wanted less control the spacing between each structure more individually, you can do that with this tab. The minimum radius in voxels corresponds to the radius scale. So this always kind of has to be smaller than your radius scale for it to work. It's an internal thing in Houdini that allows better control of your VDBs, so it kind of always has to be promoted to the surface. This little color tab down here allows for customized colors of your space filling diagram. So we'll just turn that back to what its original color. Over here on the element visualizer, we go element on. We can kind of see the different atoms or different elements that we can visualize on the structure. So if you wanted to visualize the nitrogen atoms, we can do that here with oxygen and carbon. We can also visualize the element position as well. So if you wanted to say, okay, let's look at CD1, we can find those on the diagram as well. So there's different customizations of what you can visualize on the space filling diagram, but it's really up to you. For the animation, we have two toggles for the animation on and off. So by turning this to 1, that will start to animate the model, and turning it off will keep it static. Right now, animation-wise, this is kind of still in development. I'm working on a kind of 0.2 of this tool set, so you can import a more accurate animation that's based on the temperature factor of these models. But right now we're kind of working with a noise interface. So you can add your values into the offset panel here for whichever value you choose through your temperature factor, and you can animate it by the frame range, which is $F. So by playing with the amplitude, you can also control that, the roughness and the turbulence. So that's kind of that's how our kind of space filling diagram works. It takes in the atoms associated with this chain, animates it, and allows you to customize the color and modeling and visualization of the different atoms within it. So jumping back onto our surface level, we're going to take a look at our ribbon diagram. So the ribbon diagram HDA is really fun. It has two different forms. One is animated and one is illustration mode. So illustration mode will allow for you to form your helixes, but they'll be static. And you might already notice something special about them. There's different areas on these tubes that are highlighted. And we're going to talk about that in a second, but basically that allows you to find where each kind of amino acid is located on the ribbon or the chain. So that's where they would be located. So if we turn this to animated mode, which are also isolated to the top level here, we turn these on, we should see something interesting start to happen. You can see the structure kind of slowly moving over time and also animated like that. So let's break down our ribbon diagram HDA. So diving back into here, you can see it's right beside our space filling diagram. So it is a reliance on our chain information that we bring into it. So let's start with the illustration mode. That will be probably the easiest to explain. So taking a look at the structure over here, we can go to our HDA, scroll up to the surface, and there are 3 different toggles. One is for the chain elements, one is for the amino acids, and one is for the illustration animation portion of it. So let's start with the different chain elements. Over here, there's 3 different toggles. So these 3 different toggles allow you to pick the different elements that you want to form your chain with. In this case, we've got these toggle options of nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and other carbon-based elements, and we can choose them from here. Going to amino acids, what this allows you to do is visualize the different amino acids on the structure. So if you wanted to go here, you can see that those are located here. And by swapping out this toggle, you can find any of them located on the structure. You can also turn them different colors. So based on which protein you like, if you want to keep them separated, you can do that as well. And depending on if this is an illustration or animated mode, we're working with the illustrated mode right here. So we keep illustration on. But if we were at animated mode, we'd keep animation on. And you won't see if the animated color appear on this particular null because the animation comes at the second input of the HDA. So moving over to our animated side, we'll let Houdini think itself out. We can see that our amino acid toggle is on, so we can turn that on and off. And we can go over to our illustration animation here, and we can play with basically the wire radius, wire radius of both the illustration and the animation. We can also give them different colors depending on what you want for maximum flexibility. And if we wanted these lines to be thicker, Houdini will just kind of think itself out and make them bigger on request. So there's kind of a real-time feedback like that. And down here is where you, once again, you put in your animated values if you wanted it to move. And if you wanted to add noise in, like a base noise into the ribbon model, you can do that with this kind of toggle right here. Sometimes Houdini is special and doesn't want to respond when you play it back in real time. So there's a handy dandy reset toggle right here, which will reset the simulation that's inside of this HDA. So that's very useful. If we kind of dive inside it, there's a lot going on. Up here, you can see that we have kind of a base wrangle that is figuring out the kind of strings of our name chain. And also it's inputting these groups based on the name that we can control. And then it's also kind of searching for the backbones of the lines that we can use, which in this case is looking for those 3 individual proteins. I mean, not proteins, elements, sorry, my mistake there. Over here, we have kind of 2 inputs that are happening. The first input is the kind of wireframe or illustration toggle of the ribbon. So this is the very static one with no animation at all. And the second output down here is where the actual simulation happens. And it's using something called Vellum inside of Houdini. Vellum is very good at handling wires or hairs or lines and structures such as these without massive collision mistakes. So it's great for keeping something looking kind of organic in movement when it's being represented in a wire mode or a wire shape. So it kind of just takes this line, simulates it a bit, and then down here is where the polygons or kind of structure is finalized and the colors are added. So jumping up to our surface, we're going to be covering our amino acids and how those are modeled. So if we turn on all of them, you can see that there's a lot of them straight off the bat, but Houdini loads them up back fairly quickly. So they're all colored very differently, and that's okay. I don't have them on, all of them on all the time when I'm visualizing a structure because there's just so many of them. So for sanity's sake, and also for less confusion, I'm going to turn off the majority of them while we're hunting around in the software. So going over here to a little node where I've labeled data setup and diving inside, this is pretty much all you need with to set up all these different molecules. And it's just one HDA that we've kind of refined and also set up so you can visualize different parts of the amino acids. So once again, we're bringing in our kind of handy dandy point cloud or multi-data, and we are transforming it to the center of the world, making sure it's in the same position as a ribbon diagram and space filling diagram, because you don't want to in very different places, and rotating it correctly. And then we've put down nulls to make sure the different streams of information are collected and exported successfully. And just for fun, we're going to take a look at SIR, which is, I believe, serine, the serine molecule. So I'm going to change my viewport settings so you can see this better. So I'm going to switch it from light to dark. That's another great part about Houdini, is that it's optimized for you as the artist. So depending on which settings you want, there's light, dark, gray, and different background toggles, and you have texture filtering options, zoom, or you can even apply environment maps in the background. So it's great. But heading back, talking about our HDAs again, these HDAs are very simple. If you dive inside, there's about 2 different subnets. The first subnet is actually just separating the molecules and finding the group to isolate. So if we turn on our point visualizer, it's isolating these not random groups, but these kind of molecule groups across the structure based on this single wrangle, which is isolating the res name. And then it's taking this group over here and it's grabbing all the information from this toggle to find the serine molecule. And then we kind of have a partition here just in case. And then over here in this subnetwork, we have a bunch of different things that are happening. We have 2 different outputs. This output kind of is focused on creating the connections between the atoms. And this connection over here is designed to isolate the atoms themselves so you can have better color control over them as well. So jumping over to our surface level of our HDA, we have 3 different toggling menus. We have a molecule modeling, connections, and an element visualizer. And this molecule modeling area allows for you to toggle animation on, and we have our animation settings. So in the offset area is where you enter your chosen animated values that you want these molecules to move by. You can add turbulence if you want, amplitude, roughness, etc. You can play with the voxel size again, or the point radius scale of your atoms. So if you wanted them bigger than their connections, you can do that too. Turn those back to normal. And we can also color them different colors as well. So this color is actually linked to our connections color over here, but you can also delete this channel by deleting the channels between the colors and also coloring them differently. So you can have different options when it comes to, if you want to visualize where the atoms are on a connection, you can do that as well. So we're going to just fix that here. So over here is where we would form our connections between our atoms. Sorry, I'm just going to take a drink of water. And you can see here, there is a search radius of points and a max search point radius that you can play with over here. Basically what these 2 toggles kind of do, the search points looks for the amount of points in the area, and the search radius point creates the connection. So if we were to lower this value, our connections disappear, and then the higher the values, the more connections appear between the points. So this is at your own discretion of how you would like to form these connections. Over here on our element visualizer, we can once again visualize our element and element position. So if we toggle these on, we're not going to see the color because it's red. So if we turn this to blue, we can take a look at our carbon atoms, oxygen atoms, and our nitrogen atoms like that. So it's really up to you on what you want to visualize. And once again, these toggles also work for element position. So we'll turn these blue, and there they are. So it's really customizable on what you would like to visualize and what different parts of the structure you would like to visualize as well. So jumping out of this, we're going to jump back to our kind of molecules, for our amino acids. And one big part of trying to visualize structures like these is talking about like how big the structure is and distance between amino acids and how they might connect or overlap with each other, or how close they are to each other. So we've also kind of developed this measurement tool that will actually allow you to count the amount of do a proper count of all the amino acids that you'd like to visualize, as well as a measurement tool to see the distances between them. This tool is currently working with these two amino acids right here, Val and TRP. And if we dive inside, the tool can also work with only one acid. We're working on a toggle where you don't have to use both. You don't have to use both acids at the same time, but you can also play with just one and do an accurate count of how many there are in the structure. So I'm just going to turn off these numbers so it looks like less cluttered for now. And I'm also going to turn on show all objects so you can kind of see what's going on in the viewport here. So this measurement tool actually measures the distance between this kind of molecule up here and this blue one down here. Houdini measures things automatically in meters because it's Canadian software, but you can customize your measurements of distance within the software itself in the software settings, which I believe are in your file or edit tab. So just keep that in mind when you bring things into the structure. They may feel bigger or smaller depending on its original size. So for this tool, we have 3 different toggles. We have distance, acid 1, and acid 2. Let's start with distance. So distance tab is where you control your line and font color of your measurement tool. So there isn't much to change here other than the line radius if you want to make that thicker or thinner. You can also play with the font size as well, and the font color and the line size, and the line color. So going over to acid 1, what you can do here is there's a toggle where you can say numbers on, and numbers on will basically assign a number to every single molecule within the structure based on how many they are. And then based on where your tool is and is pointing to, it will also color the selected number it is involving in the distance calculation. So in this case, we've kind of told it to visualize the number 2 because that's the number index it's grabbing for the tool. If you want to change which kind of molecule you are measuring in the software, if you were to change this to 5, the tool should update and find molecule 5. Also, we'll jump from 2 to 5, and now 5 will be highlighted, and the distance will also be updated as well. You can also play with the font size of the numbers and the kind of thickness of them as well if you wanted to render them. An index is also where you would isolate numbers if you'd like. The next thing is an amino acid 2, so I'm going to turn off these numbers right here, go over to amino acid 2 and turn this on, and you can basically find out which ones it is highlighting. So we have 2 things going on here where we have it's isolating kind of molecule 5 over here, and it's giving every single kind of molecule a different number as well. And down here is where you can color things differently. So the chosen number, if you wanted to make that red instead of yellow, you can do that for better visualization purposes. And once again, you can play with the thickness and font size. It's really up to you of how you'd like to customize this tool. Hopefully in the future, we're also going to be adding another function to this tool where you can not only just measure one particular amino acid or molecule, but you can also measure ribbon structures themselves. There will be a little toggle on our ribbon tool where you can measure just different select parts of the structures based on other ones. So that's kind of the HDs we've developed and what is kind of in progress right now, which is really great. And kind of jumping back into our presentation, I'm going to stop share and reshare my screen.
That was awesome, Kate.
Yeah, we got more. We got to talk about our HTAs now.
I think we might have to pick that up in the next episode because we've just run out of time. We're at the top of the hour.
Okay.
So why don't you give a quick overview of this and tease them with what's going to come in the next, in the second version of this webinar, and then we'll wrap up from there. Okay.
Okay, sure. So basically, we've been developing these HTAs. So you can find these HTAs that we've kind of gone over today and talked about on the Grid Markets website, as well as my own site, katexagoraris.com. All of these HTAs work in combination with each other, and all of them are really particular. And most of them work well with most proteins on PPD, especially ones that are associated with human functions. I'm working on something else with PPD related data because I noticed that there's some proteins related to marine structures on the sites. So I'm developing HTAs associated with those as well. But basically, we have 4 of them available: the wireframe HTA, the space filling HTA, which the wireframe is for visualizing your molecules, space filling the overall structure, the molecule measure HTA, so any 1 to 2 finish and model molecule groups to work, and the ribbon diagram HTA, which allows you to form those big helices. So all of those are available in open source and ready for download. The HTA package also comes with an example file. So if you're not sure how to use them, you can open up the example file and see how everything is set up within the file to get them to work. And the package also comes with pre-downloaded data, so you can have some example molecules to model as well. And that's pretty much it. I'll hand it back over to Mark.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was an amazing presentation and a beautiful presentation. As we are running short on time today, we'd like to encourage anyone who has any questions to please send your questions to us via email at pharma@gridmarkets.com. We look forward to seeing you in May for the second of our scientific visualization series webinars, where Kate will pick up where she left off today. Watch our website link for exact date and time details. And in regards to that, do you have a simulations visualization challenge Kate, Grid Markets, and Houdini can help solve? If so, drop us a line again at that pharma@gridmarkets.com email, and we'll visualize it for you during our next webinar in May. Also, be sure to save your seat for our March 15th webinar featuring New Chem Sciences and their presentation, Molecular Modeling in the Cloud, a turnkey solution for scalable SIMS. Registration can be found on the upcoming webinars page of our Grid Markets Pharma website. Again, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in March and May for our next Grid Markets Pharma webinars.